All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Young Professionals Network live podcast and After Work Social presented by Howard Hughes. My name is Rosie Nguyen, and I am a reporter with ABC 13. Today, I am joined by a great and lovely six-person panel to discuss today about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Thank you, all of you, for joining us here today. We are also live online as well. The format today for the panel discussion is I will start by introducing our panel, and then I have a list of prepared questions. I will direct the question to one of our panelists, and then from there I want it to be very organic. I want it to be a discussion. I want it to be a conversation. So any of y'all can jump in. Y'all can play off of each other's answers. If you think of something, please feel free to jump in and just continue the conversation. So I will start by introducing our panel today. We have here Ms. Carmen Watkins, who is the Senior Vice President of Membership, Growth, and Sustainability for the NAACP. If you can just hold your hand up. Then we have Jason Rocha, who is the President and Founder of the Woodlands Pride. Here we have Pete Garcia, who is the President of the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce. Over here is Jennifer Applegate. She is the Director of Community Relations for Impact Fleet. We have Sherelle Duncan, Leadership Training and Development Chair for the National Urban League Young Professionals, and Alexis Luoma, who is the Senior Manager of Culture and Communications for Howard Hughes Corporation. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. Carmen, I'm going to direct the first question to you. So we're here to talk about DEI. I think we should define what each letter in the acronym means. So let's start with the D for diversity. How would you define what diversity is?
At its real simplest level, diversity is the recognition and hopefully acceptance of difference. And there are various types of differences. My mother used to say the isms. Is it racism, sexism? You know, there are challenges in life, mental or physical challenges. All those things are differences. So it's a recognition of those things, but hopefully the acceptance of them.
And celebration.
And celebration. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and also include that it's the richness of who someone is, right? Everyone here as individuals, we all have things that make us special and unique, and that is, as you mentioned, the celebration of diversity. For me, it may be that I'm a woman and I'm African American. For others, it may be something different, but all of it's the richness and core of who we are.
And I think I love that both of you mentioned that diversity goes beyond just race. Mm-hmm. When we think about diversity, a lot of times people default to race, but like y'all said, it has to do with gender. It has to do with sexuality, gender and sexual identity. It has to do with physical ability, religion, age, marital status, socioeconomic status, national origin, and just so much more. Okay, so Jason, let's talk about the E, the equity. How do we define equity?
Well, equity, a lot of times people think of equality as the pinnacle of where we should be or where we want to be, but that isn't the same as equity. Equality would be, hey, you both get a Snickers bar. Well, equity would say, hey, if you might have some health issues, we're going to give you a sugar-free Snickers bar, and we're going to give you a regular Snickers bar so that you aren't held behind or you aren't held back. You're both going to be fulfilled without being hurt. So that is a very basic level of what equity versus equality means, but that is, I guess I'm hungry for a Snickers, so that's why I brought that up. And so that's what I think about when I think of equity.
Yeah, when I think about equity, I always picture, there's this graphic you see a lot of, multiple people standing near a fence and they're trying to see over it. And some people are taller than others, so some people need more help to see over that fence. And I think, at work, the assistance that we provide people to reach the desired result, can be anything from like working hours accommodation for working parents who might need to start earlier or later in the day. Additional technology assistance for people who aren't familiar with certain new softwares or machines that we use in the office. So I think it's just like providing what's needed to help people achieve the desired result, and that's different for everybody.
I like that she talks about providing those things that are needed. I always think of equity not as a Snickers bar.
This is something that I know about pretty well. Just because, of my situation, I'm blind and I work in a sighted society. So it's like, when you go to interview, when you're getting hired, when's the right time to bring up the fact that you may need some extra assistance, some accommodations to do your work?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I think it's also about understanding that, there are those across socioeconomic spectrums that have different experiences and may have a leg up in the process. And recognizing that as we build out a culture and a workforce that accommodates that understands that recognizes that, and that also says, I'm going to do the best that I can to ensure that every employee that I have has the best opportunity to succeed.
And going off of that, I think it's understanding that saying you have a leg up does not mean we want to take the leg away from you. It's not a competition in that context. A competition in terms of who gets the project or something like that is totally different than saying, hey, you started here, we just want to recognize that and appreciate that. We're not saying you're better than or less than, we're just saying that you might have a leg up, and that's totally okay. But just also recognize that I might not have that head start like you did. And I think some of that is because the baseline in this country is, for the white, male, Christian, cisgendered, straight. And if you aren't all of those, then you are starting a little bit behind. And so that's where the equity part really comes in. Not everybody's a Christian. Not everybody is a man. Not everybody's, all the other things that I mentioned. And recognizing that and helping out your neighbors is so important. And the only way we can get to full equality is to take care of all the other things and issues in this country.
All right, well, let's talk about the I in DEI. It stands for inclusion. Pete, how would you define inclusion?
Inclusion I see as the willingness, the openness to accept all of those people from whatever origin they came from, religion, sexual orientation. The willingness to open your eyes and learn about other people is what brings us knowledge. George Bush, former president, says, the key to resolving most challenges is education. If we educate ourselves on other people that may be different from us, then we can learn to accept that. We can then treat it with dignity. We can then treat it with respect. And then we can share it with our circles of influence. That's including those around us. Workers, family, friends. In our general social contact with people, we explain what we see in other people and what we hope to gain. That's including them in the picture. I consider myself an inclusionist simply because I've learned about other cultures through my career, and I've seen how valuable it is. A lot of people say it's just for righteousness to do the right thing, but then for business, it's a different story. Why do you do it for business? Well, businesses are here to make money. You do it because it can bring you value to your employees, value to your customers, and value to the general public. It generates revenue. It's a good investment to invest in including all.
Well said. Anyone else want to jump in on inclusion?
So I will say in my particular job as Director of Community Relations, I seek out community service projects to lead the company to lead other employees to do. And so, for me, I could just say, well, here's a project that I thought of that I think you should join me in working in. Or I could say to them, what are you passionate about serving in? Tell me what you're passionate about serving in so we can do something that all of us would like to serve in.
Can I ask a question of the group that
Yes.
kind of goes off of that?
Please.
To counterbalance that. So when we say inclusion, obviously these groups are, Black groups, LGBTQ groups, veteran groups. So to a lot of the audience or to the people who are running these businesses, what would you say to answer that question? How is it inclusive if it is a group specific to not me? If that makes sense.
I'll gladly start that, because people think of the NAACP as an all African American group, and that is absolutely not the case, even from its beginning. It was started by half white, half black. And most people don't recognize that. In our partnerships, in our work, we work toward the change and the evolution and policy for that impact Black communities. That is the goal, the mission, the mission. But it is not who we all do the work with. I'll even go beyond that. I think because we have an added layer of responsibility to be inclusive. And even as an African American community, we are not all monolithic. And we have to also address that in a way that is inclusive in the way we approach our work, in the way that we partner, in the way that we do our work. I think for groups that are solo focused, you have a higher level of responsibility to show the example of how you can be inclusive.
Yeah, I would echo that. So the National Urban League was also founded by many different people, not just African Americans. And for many years, the work that they've done sure has championed the Black community. But if you look at what we stand for, we empower communities and we change lives, right? And so empower communities, not just the Black community, it's every community. And so much like the NAACP, we work very hard to ensure that we are inclusive of everyone. We don't say no to people who need our services. We will champion anyone who is looking for some of the pillars that we stand for. And so, yeah, I think that we, as she mentioned, we have a responsibility, and we understand that, to not just be solo focused, but to be focused on empowering not just the African American community, but everyone at large.
And I think with those, we recognize that with everyone, there's intersectionality of identity. People who are biracial, like for example, you're biracial, right? And I see a lot of partnerships across different organizations too, so that they could provide resources to those who may have different needs, right? Different sort of unique accommodations, that they could help these individuals who have intersectionalities within their identities. So thank you so much for posing that great follow-up question. It's a great question. I'm sure that has crossed some people's minds before. So let's bring this down to an organizational level. Would any of y'all say that companies, businesses, and organizations are becoming more conscious about their DEI efforts? And if so, what would you say may be the reason for that?
I would love to start, because I've been around a little
Because I was like,
I heard it.
I saw ears perk up.
So I've been around a little bit. Don't let the die fool you. But and I have worked in corporate America, and so I see often diversity being this cyclical notion. It weaves and bobs, it's hills and valleys. It's never this. And the reason that it's never this, because it's always an initiative. It's always this initiative that is created to address something. Was it a competitor that was sued? Is it an increase of market share of a certain population? Is it a complaint of employees? Who knows? All right. And I don't want to talk about the company I work for, so don't ask me. All right. But what I will say is this. Until companies understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion has to become part of the mainstream, part of the culture of their organization, you will always bob and weave. The minute it gets tight, the market gets tight, finances get tight, revenue is tight, the first group that's cut is diversity. The second group is HR. It goes from what? Those that seek change to those that fight for employees that might have issues. It's cut. it has not, that has not changed. So I'm glad that we're back on a cycle of recognizing and celebrating diversity, and maybe because our community is different. My hope is that as companies grow and then companies adopt this initiative, it moves into a culture of their existence. And so we don't have to continue to redefining what diversity, equity, and inclusion are. We've been talking about this for 25 years, guys. In this community, they get it. Everyone gets it. MLK, everyone talks about I have a dream. My favorite MLK quote is, "Nothing is more dangerous in this world than sincere ignorance or conscientious stupidity." And we got to figure out, where are we going to sit on that spectrum? When are we going to take this work seriously? If it really makes a difference to our bottom line, then how do we factor that? How do we make that a profit sharing notion? How do we add that to the profit equation? Because it is there. It's absolutely there. So let's tie that to our bottom line.
Well, I think that people, oh, go ahead.
And I knocked my whole thing off.
I did too.
Okay.
The bottom line should start at the top.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you look at corporate boards, 0.6% Latina women on corporate boards. Not even almost half a percent. Male Latinos is another 2%.
Yeah.
And then you go on and you add, but you're still looking at a 90% white, gray board member. When you have people on the board running the company like that, that do not represent the population of your company, of your customers, of your country, you're not doing the right thing. As you mentioned, diversity seems like a project. It is not a project. It should be incorporated into the philosophy of the company as a core, just like finance, planning, HR, all of those things you have to try to make, companies need to try to make, the boards need to try to make it a part of the core of the company, that it is for everyone in the company. And I think when we get to that level, we'll have accomplished a lot more. We're very, very far from that, though, today.
And I don't want to throw the conversation off, nor will I monopolize, so I'm going to be quiet for a couple minutes. But y'all got me hot a little bit. Okay.
We triggered her.
But yeah, but when you also get to the point where you serve on a board, you are there for a reason.
Correct.
Not to necessarily kowtow to everyone else who's on the board. Embrace your diversity and value what you have to bring to the table. Yeah. It does not mean that you're less professional, that you don't understand market share and profitability. It does mean, though, that you can broaden the scope of that customer base and the value that that company might have. And sometimes we serve on boards, or we rotate the same people on a board, because they're the same as everyone else on the board. That's not diversity, that's paint. Okay, I'm done.
You had a comment, I'm sorry.
I did. So just when I was thinking about this question earlier, I thought about how we often react to moments, right? And so the most recent one I think we can all agree to is George Floyd. Lots of protests, everyone put out a statement, everyone's saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And that's cool. Some of it is also very much so performative. And so time always tells with how will you actually make the change that you were saying. We noted bottom lines. You know, I think it goes beyond just making a statement so that your customers continue to buy your XYZ product. It goes beyond just making a statement so that people don't snoop into what you've been doing in your business practices. And actually, it boils down to making cultural shifts in your organization, making cultural shifts in your leadership, and having individuals who reflect not just a moment, and it's not just George Floyd. He's just the one that, it was a lot of shooting of black men happening. But not just that, but also we look at the API community and how the murders that occurred in that community, how everyone's talking about that and how we all believe. And so I think just in general, we are very reactionary, but it would be great to see us, as we've all noted, see how we can make some real true changes within organizations so that whenever something does occur again, I don't have to go look for the black or the brown or anyone representative of the company. They're the head of my company and they can talk about something that's relative to them, right? And so I think that when we see that, then we'll actually see some long-term sustainable changes.
However, I would like to say this, though. I think even though there's a lot of awareness right now because of Floyd and issues like that, we're also seeing the defense mechanism come in. Yeah. If you look at the attack now on companies like Disney, yeah, for its voicefulness, right, for its standing up for its employees, its customers, it's a dangerous thing to do in today's world, to be voiceful. CEOs are now preferring to stay quiet because of fear of retaliation. Oh, they're going to tax me. Oh, they're going to take away the benefits that I have, which is exactly what's happening to Disney. That's a prime example of the fear that people can put in to people running companies. Mm-hmm. And that is a real challenge.
Right, but you'll have fears on both sides, right? So you just have to choose as a culture, what do you believe? And then you just have to stand on that. And it may affect your bottom line, it may affect the customers you have, but you just have to be fine with that. I think Disney will be okay.
Keep in mind the CEO keep in mind the CEO reports to a board.
Yeah. And I understand that, and I think that Disney will be okay. Yeah. So again, it's just all about how do you as an organization, right? It's not one person making a decision, it's a board. I understand how those things work. How does everyone, where do we want to be when we look back 20 years from now? Where do we want to say we were? And how has that changed our culture, our business for the better? Mm-hmm. And those are the types of questions that need to be addressed in companies when it comes to DEI, and I would even argue to say J for justice.
Mm-hmm. So in my mother's company, we have quite a bit of females. We didn't have a Hispanic female, so a few years ago, my mother and brother hired a Hispanic female. So when the customers call in and they have issues with their fuel cards not working at the gas station or whatever, the Hispanic lady is able to speak to them in Spanish and help them with their issues. I'll also say that my mother worked for NASA in the late 1960s, and all the males were receiving promotions. She was doing all the work. And she went and talked to her boss about it. He chose to do nothing about it, so she went to college, and she now owns her own company. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with the board stuff that we're talking about, there's a lot of young people here, and just anybody. If you've applied for a job in the last 2 years, raise your hand if you looked at the board of directors to see the makeup difference of the board. I mean, I have. If you haven't, Google's right there. You should, because that's going to reflect the culture of your company that you're going to work for. I do that with nonprofits that I want to partner with. If it's a nonprofit that all looks the same, they're not getting a dime from me, because what are they doing for the people that look like me, or the people that look like my neighbor? Right. Because how do they understand? Again, it doesn't have to just be me. If it was just brown gay people on their board, wouldn't donate to them either, because then they're not providing services for everybody. And so that's something that, as you look for new opportunities, and as your friends look for new opportunities, the boards that you work for, the nonprofits that you work for, look at who they are. It's online, and they have to report it. And so that goes for religious institutions. That goes for any institution out there. So.
Yes, and also recognize the role that you play at the organization. So if you sit on a board, as I already mentioned, I worked for an organization, the board hired me. None of them looked like me. Wow. And it was very clear when they were hiring, this is a diversity hire, right? So you have to pay attention to that, because that'll inform your community and your culture when you get in an organization. You have to make a decision, am I here to make radical change in an organization, or am I here just for a paycheck, right? Yeah. So think about those things when you are looking for jobs, when you are being representative, and when you sit on the board side, if you happen to be the only or one of the only minorities on a board, I would challenge them and say, what are we doing this for? What is the end goal? I would always advise anyone, advocate not just for yourself, but everyone who's coming into an organization to ensure that an organization is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I just want to add one caveat to that, though, and this is to young people. So if you are hired and you're the only one of whatever, only female, only black, only Hispanic, don't shy from that opportunity. It does at least mean that the company is willing to be, what? Inclusive. And what you have to do now, you may have a challenge, but part of your challenge is about changing I know we're going to talk about bias, but changing the perception of what may have kept them from being more inclusive before. So accept the challenge, because now, you are leading the path for others to follow.
I have two things real quick. First, I want to say that I was talking from a place of deep privilege by saying that I could just pass on a job because of whatever, and I just want to acknowledge that. I'm very fortunate in the connections I have, the relationships I have, and the upbringing I had. And there are plenty of people out there that if you need the job, take the job. And you are not going to be judged for that because we have kids, dogs, life, medical bills. We have so many things that we have to pay for, and so I apologize for that. Secondly, with what you were saying just now is, the old notion of if there's not a seat at the table for you, make it, doesn't really need to exist anymore, because it's 2022. If this chamber doesn't embrace LGBTQ people, which it does, they've done great things with Woodlands Pride. But if it didn't, I don't need to sit at their board or go to their meetings. I can go to the Houston LGBT Chamber, and then I can have impacts there, and then we as a collective group can have impacts. So, yes, make those movements and sit on those in those rooms and have those conversations with people. But at the end of the day, we don't need to be doing all the teaching. I'm exhausted. I'm sure people are too.
I'm exhausted. I'm a lot older than you, but I'm not. I'm just tired. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Let's just acknowledge that fatigue, social
It's a real
justice
thing.
fatigue
Yes,
is a thing.
it's a real thing. It's a real thing. But this is the challenge that I give individuals, and I've worked in mostly white organizations, and now the NAACP and everything across the board. Okay. The opportunity that you have, when you turn down opportunities, particularly if it's an opportunity that you want, you're giving that company a pass and now giving them the chance to say, well, we tried, but we couldn't find anybody. We tried, but nobody responded. And everything is, I passed down some opportunities, and I do not come from privilege, but I am particular. All right. And so I think you have that as a right in your life. And I've been very fortunate with opportunities. By the same token, though, I think it's time to shake up some rooms. And I'm looking for people who want to shake up rooms. But I'm an agitator, right? Okay, that's not your thing. Don't do it. I think people need to become more comfortable with, when people are being inclusive, accepting the challenge. Accepting the challenge because you are professional, you are talented, you have the expertise, you know what you're doing. And show it. Walk in your space, own it. Own it. And then let them watch you succeed.
A lot of good points coming out of that question. So let's talk about what people can do now within their own companies and organizations. What are some tips that you have for people to recognize unconscious bias within their company? And we're talking about microaggressions. We're talking about xenophobia. A, how do they recognize it? Two, how can it be addressed?
I went to just about all-white college. It was less than 8%. I was prepared because that wasn't my first time in an all-white school setting. But the first time, my roommate said, "Let me touch your hair." Just FYI, don't touch a black woman's hair. I'm just going to tell y'all that. That's a tip, free.
Well, don't touch my hair either.
Don't,
Don't touch my
don't,
hair either.
you know. But when she said, I want to touch your hair, because she had never been that close to an African American female, I knew it was not hurtful in her mind. To this day, I don't believe she was trying to hurt me. But it was offensive because of my past, of what I've been through. It's an educational moment. And I started by saying, don't you ever ask another black woman to touch their hair. Okay, we're going to do this one time, and you're gonna get past it, right? Okay, if we're going to live together. So I think there is this notion of being, I don't think you're unbiased. I think you often know exactly what you're doing. I think that companies, and I'm going to go beyond the colleague level, at the director's level, at the vice president's level, we have allowed managers and supervisors to say, well, I didn't mean it. How many times can you not mean it? And until those vice presidents and senior vice presidents say, look, you got to tighten this up. Your colleagues will always feel comfortable being microaggressive because now it's a part of your company culture. And that's where we have to stop. We have to stop. Guys, you got to stop it. I know I've got some vice presidents here. Don't raise your hand. I know I have directors in here. Don't raise your hand. But the third time the employee comes in and says, I really didn't mean it. I didn't know that was offensive. They know.
Go read a book.
Say it again. Say it again.
It's just go educate yourself, read a book. To her point, I think a tip is to be bold in your honesty and feel comfortable enough to express that. Now, I won't be naive and pretend that everyone works in an environment where you can address a microaggression without fear of being fired or fear of being retaliated. We know those things really happen, right? That's why everyone has a choice. But I do think that you can try to advocate for better HR practices. You can try to advocate for critical conversations to occur. You can try to advocate for DEI workshops within your organization if you see things are happening, to try to nudge a conversation around bad behavior or unwanted behavior that people may be experiencing. I think there's a lot of different access points to get to a goal that you may have, so it would just be about poking and prodding until you can get to where you're trying to go. And if all of them are not a success, then perhaps it is time for you to leave that organization because you find yourself in a position where nothing will change. And again, that is a choice that you would have to make for yourself. I cannot tell you what to do with your finances.
You know, I remember during COVID, and I hope if you don't remember anything else, you remember this. I was one of those extreme lockdown people. My children really got angry with me about that, but so what? But I got really sick. And I didn't have COVID, but I got really sick. And I had my hair up in braids because I dare not go to the beauty shop, you know. And, you know, I was looking like I had been home for 6 months. Let me just say that, very comfortable. And I had to think about that evening how I would be accepted in the hospital because of this notion of bias. I'm an older black female, overweight, with braids, and I'm sick. So I can't advocate for myself at the moment, nor can my family go in with me. How will I be received? Now that was real in the COVID moment, but I'm telling you, at your job site, there are individuals. It may not be about race. It may be about size. It may be about sexism. It may be about mental or physical challenges. It may be about so many things that are now questioning, how do I move forward with this bias? And it's real for them, but they're scared to talk about it, or they're scared to make a move. So how, as a business, do you create an environment where staffers feel comfortable sharing that? That's the challenge of business.
I'd like to add to your original question, what do we do? What do companies do? You have to incorporate that this is a concept, an idea that needs to be integrated into the company. It needs to be part of everything that that company does. It usually starts with doing your homework, doing your research, and then having the ability to share that education throughout your employees, as well as your customers and your vendors, about all the differences and all the similarities that we have. Once we start doing that on a daily basis, companies start doing that on a daily basis, as opposed to, oh, this week is, X week because we're going to celebrate this diversity. No, it's celebrating diversity every day and every realm of the differences that we have, as well as the sim, and trying to bring that to a center of similarity where we all see each other as human beings, as opposed to race, religion, sex, or whatever that be. But it's got to be incorporated as part of a company's total culture, not as a project.
Absolutely.
So how do you celebrate diversity every day, practically? I'm interested in hearing.
Okay, I'll give you an example, the way I did it with my company that I work with. I was launching routes into Latin America. We were a domestic U.S. company that didn't fly. We didn't know anything about Latin Americans. I would say, we'll put some hot sauce on there and everybody will be happy. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So you have to start with your marketing people, your HR people, your sales people, your managers, on learning what are the things that Latins like and don't like. What are some parts of the culture, not only the food, because in Latin America we don't all drink tequila, we don't all drink salsa or dance salsa. We do things differently. Most people try to put all the Latinos, they all drink salsa. No, they don't. They all like hot sauce. No, they don't. So you do that by bringing all of your work departments in place on those, educating them on the different diversities. Then you can keep spreading the word every day, whether you identify one difference or another difference. But you've got to incorporate it, and you've got to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. But you can start with one single difference within a company and then grow it from there. Whether it be African American, whether it be Latino, whether it be a sexual issue, whether it be religion.
Yeah.
You have to try to, first of all, you have to get rid of the fear.
Right.
And that's usually the problem with diversity. People are afraid of what they don't know.
Yes.
They're afraid because I've never been around these people before. I've never been to that part of town. I don't know what they're going to do to me there. All of those guys from Mexico, I don't know what they're going to do to me. You have to educate yourself, but then you educate those around you, your employees, and you incorporate it into your company. But you've got to start with the first step.
Yes, I think that's great, and I just wanted to make sure that the audience understood, it's continuing conversations, it's reading books, it's sharing knowledge, it's just having practices that you make habits within your culture and within the company. So it's not just more of we're going to celebrate Black History Month.
Right.
We're celebrating Black history every day.
So if I could speak to a little bit about the religious diversity. My mother went up to New Hampshire, New England, New York in 2002 to be a sales manager. Her ex-boss was up there, and she had recruited my mom to come work for that company up there. So now most of the salespeople were Jewish. My mom's not Jewish. She knew nothing about their Jewish traditions and holidays and what they like to eat. And she had scheduled a sales meeting right in the middle of one of their holidays. And she brought donuts. They ate bagels. She knew nothing about how they were and what they did. She had to learn about it.
Yeah, and I think all of y'all bring up a great point about learning on the job. Most of the time we don't expect people to come in with the full set of skills to 100% do whatever is presented to them on the daily. people are expected to, learn and grow and be evaluated against that learning and growth over time. So I think it's important that we, continue to be patient with people while holding them to a certain expectation.
I think there's a small chew too. I think, and we did it in ACP because we are a lot more diverse than people would think. But when you think about how do you celebrate diversity in the workplace, it's an HR function, but HR can't do it alone. Pull a collaborative group of the colleagues that are representative from cross-sectional groups. You open that up to a degree that you may be some groups you don't even know exist in your workplace. And then let them define what celebrating them means. And then refine it against your core values or mission statement or whatever the case may be. But often we assign it to a group that's very limited, and often the group looks just like everybody around the table, and they don't get a full grasp of what's even available in the company. So you can't celebrate it.
You said something very important there, and that is we tend to think that we want people to treat us the way we want to be treated. And that's not the way to do it. You want to treat people the way they want to be treated. Now, how do you understand how they want to be treated? Not by looking at yourself. You've got to look at.
I would add that you should treat people the way you view people like God views people, not just how you view them.
Right. Exactly. Everybody wants to be treated differently, but you've got to try to understand how they want to be treated.
Fair.
Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you so much. This has been such an insightful discussion. We have less than 5 minutes left. So I knew the discussion was going to fly by. I knew this was a hot topic. I'd like to give an opportunity for us to leave some parting thoughts that our audience can take away from. If any of you could share, what can a company do to build a library of DEI resources for their staff, or where can a company go if they don't even know where to start or they need some guidance on their DEI efforts?
I'll start. Go to Google, Google. So it's the simplest way. You can research anything. That's what it is. And you can go to your peers, your colleagues. You can find people who are doing this work. And you can recruit them to help you do better in your company. And so that's what I would want to share with everyone, is that if you find yourself in a position where you don't understand a background or a community, do some research, educate yourself, and then you can take that and be empowered to educate others in a mindful way.
There are a number of diversity guides that are available, and I don't subscribe to one or the other, but we often, I know we at the NACP and other places that I work, there's always a reading list for professional development. And so, add some of those to the list. But while you're adding that, also add literature from authors of diverse backgrounds, because it speaks to how the culture sees themselves, not how the professionals see this work. And it creates this intersectionality for how you move forward. And so, I'm happy to share a list. We only have 5 minutes, so I'm not going to do it now. Don't get nervous, Rosie. But there's some great literature available for you to talk about in work groups, lunch bags, brown bags, I don't even know what they call them anymore, to expand kind of the awareness of your employee base.
I too have a list that I'll share afterwards.
I would say, I don't have resources off the top of me, but I would say practice at home. The things that you do in your personal life, if you do those at the bar with your friends, or the happy hours, your weddings, or whatever you're doing outside, if you're making the jokes and laughing at the said jokes about the people, about women, about people of color, you're going to laugh at the office. Because that's what we do. We are trained people. We are conditioned people. We are habitual people. So when you hear those things at work, feel the freedom to approach those people and ask them, do you know that you could hurt your neighbor? You could hurt Cindy down the hallway. Do you know that? And if I hear that again, I'm going to report that. Or I'm going to report it right now, whatever you do. Take the opportunity to take control of that diversity training on on-the-job training, and do it at home. It matters everywhere you go.
All right, well, thank you everyone so much. That is actually time, 6 o'clock on the dot. I just want to say thank you, Carmen, thank you, Jason, Pete, Jennifer, Chevrell, and Alexis. If y'all need more resources, I'm hoping that the Woodlands Chamber of Commerce can share that Young Professionals Network and whatnot. Thank you so much for such an insightful discussion, and I look forward to the After Work Social after this.
Thank you,
everybody.
Rosie, and
Thanks,
thank you to the
Rosie.
Woodlands Chamber of Commerce as well.
Thank you, Chamber.
Thank you.